Welcome back, everybody, to the Assertive Podcast. I'm Erica.
I'm Jess.
And we are licensed professional counselors in Texas, reviewing Am I the Asshole Reddit threads to help you learn skills for communication, healthy boundary setting, and assertive interpersonal functioning. Today, we are going to continue our series on emotions, giving you some follow-up with fear, which we started on Tuesday. Today, we're going to be looking at coping skills and how do we actually manage fear and anxiety. We are going to start by rereading our post, which is titled, Am I the Asshole for Forcing My Partner with Social Anxiety to Meet My Family? My fiance is 27 and I'm 28, and we are getting married next year. We have been dating for almost 8 years. My family was not aware of our relationship as they are very conservative. I only informed them last year. My parents have not been able to meet my partner face-to-face due to the pandemic. They are now making plans to visit in a few months, but I've met him on FaceTime and love him. My fiance has developed severe social anxiety in the last few years. He can still socialize when he needs to for work, but he prefers to keep to himself, me, and his family. FYI, he hasn't always been like this. When I met him, he was the social butterfly. My parents and I wanted him to meet my uncle and my aunt who live near me. My parents have been wanting him to meet my uncle since May of 2021. He finally caved and met him in December of 2021. The meeting went really well. He told me he will meet my aunt in May of 2022. It's now August of 2022, and he is still refusing to meet her. He has said I'm selfish for pushing him into a situation that gives him so much anxiety, and he has, quote, already done so much, and that I shouldn't keep wanting more. I'm really close to my aunt. She is like a second mom to me, and I really want him to meet her. FYI, I have had to make it out to my family that I'm the one who doesn't want him to meet people so that they won't judge him. They think I'm being unreasonable and ridiculous. My partner has also been seeing a psychologist to help him, but I don't know if it's helping. Am I the asshole? I missed the caveat at the beginning that this is a really old post, but it just fit our needs, so we pulled it and used it.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give us the recap from Tuesday's episode for those who maybe haven't heard it yet?
Yeah, so before we determine who's the asshole and relay that, to summarize the anxiety part 1 for you guys, we talked about the function of fear, which is to keep us safe. Synonyms would include things, anxiety, stress, worry, nervousness, things like that. Too much fear is paranoia, and we see this a lot in trauma responses where we get hypervigilant. So we talked about that's basically applying a threat that has happened, and now it's getting applied to threats that are not actually real. Not enough anxiety is recklessness, which is us disregarding legitimate threats, which obviously can put us in safety concerns. Just like with all emotions, anxiety is neither good nor bad. It tells us something. So to use anxiety constructively, we need to figure out how it makes us productive. So we all have our own kind of optimal, we call it stress arousal state. So finding that on yourself for a scale of 1 to 10. If we're not stressed at all, we're going to get bored. We're going to be disinterested and tired. If we're too stressed, we're going to get way too flooded and not be able to function. So with adaptive coping, it's helping us take action on stress. Too much stress happens when we feel our responsibilities are outside our ability to manage. So what healthy anxiety looks like is taking action on things that we have control over and trying to worry less about things that are outside of our locus of control. We talked about the dangers of avoidance, which is basically it breaks down our anxiety immune system. So if we're not administering these vaccines of anxiety to ourselves, we're going to lose to stress tolerance. It's like the idea of having no antibodies to protect against disease. Just like with anxiety, we have to be able to tolerate some of that. We briefly touched on perfectionism and that being sometimes an adaptive way to manage responsibilities, other times being an adaptive way to keep ourselves safe and to avoid conflict. So again, baby with the bathwater, not all anxiety is bad. It can be very productive. And healthy coping is sorting through what action do I need to take and letting go of the non-action points. What did I miss?
I think that was it. Fear responses. We have
Oh,
fight,
yep.
flight, freeze, and fawn.
That's a lot. There's a recapping, but there's 4 different ways that people react that way. All are a
Yeah.
function of stress.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
We didn't talk about like state versus trait anxiety. Basically, what it is some people are just naturally anxious.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So they have a higher trait anxiety. Other people have low trait anxiety, but they may have high specific like state anxiety. So, like social anxiety, they could have no anxiety elsewhere in life that's maladaptive, but they have one particular state where they experience anxiety.
I like that. I functionally use that concept every day, but I didn't. Yeah, good. I like that naming it.
Yeah.
State versus trait. Okay. So when we went through the "Am I the asshole" on this post, what did we decide?
We focused mostly on the author,
Mhm.
a little bit on the fiance. I think he'll probably pop up here because we're talking about coping skills.
Yeah.
But we decided author is the asshole. She's enabling him to avoid his anxiety versus helping him manage that effectively. She's enabling him as far as like with family as to why he can't meet them or what's that breakdown. So she's kind of playing the middle person there. Basically, she was the asshole, was our ultimate.
Yeah. She's playing diplomat. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he's obviously the asshole because he's not managing his anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So he's doing a lot of avoidance and escapism.
Yeah.
With it. So
nice. So we know everything there is to know now about stress. Now we don't really know what to do with it yet. So yeah, kind of ease us in here about just anxiety and how we kind of pitch the coping skills that we use.
Yeah. We talked about this briefly in part 1 on Tuesday, locus of control. And is this something within my control? Is this something outside of my control? Part of all of that is really deconstructing the fear, the anxiety, the stress, looking for core beliefs related to that. What are we actually afraid of in this moment? Sometimes there are physical threats, right? Maybe I'm afraid to get fired. Maybe I'm afraid my house will burn down. So I'm like constantly worried if I shut off the stove. Some are emotional threats. So I'm afraid my partner will leave me, or I'm afraid I'll embarrass myself.
Mm-hmm.
So once we understand what that fear actually is, then we can start implementing various coping skills to address that. A really basic one I start with my clients is this something we're actually in danger of? House burning down, that's plausible, but did you turn off your stove? Well, I didn't use my stove this morning. Sounds like you're not in danger.
Mm-hmm. Say, what is the risk? Like, what do you think you're afraid of there? Yeah.
Yeah. With some of the emotional threats, it's okay, if you're embarrassed, that would be uncomfortable, but would you be able to survive that? Would being embarrassed kill you? No. So there's not real danger. It would feel uncomfortable, it would feel really terrible, but you would survive that and you go on to live the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not to demean the anxiety at all, but to help put it into perspective. Your anxiety is over functioning for you. There's some aspect here that was helpful.
Yeah.
And it kind of stayed on the job too long.
So it's the kind of parsing. So the actual threat might have picked up kind of all of these other kind of buddy fears that go into it. So we're kind of helping that client shave away the layers to say, what is the actual fear here?
Mm-hmm.
And then like addressing that for them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, when I'm like starting to work with clients, high anxiety clients, I take that same approach of like, okay, fear helps keep us safe. And like, what is the threat? And then but the productive part of it is us making a plan that looks like, to-do list, asking for help, delegating, prioritizing, whatever. And then the rest is saying, okay, this isn't serving me. This is simply rumination or like need for control. Mm-hmm. And so then that's where the coping skills get applied for, is that unproductive anxiety and separating out that action points.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's one of the maybe first techniques you might teach a client who's coming to you for anxiety?
I have a lot of different techniques. The first one I'll give you guys is diffusion.
Mm-hmm.
This is essentially saying a lot of times we fuse with our emotions, and instead of interpreting them as data, we interpret them as who we are. So we'll say, I'm really anxious. I'm a really anxious person. While you may experience anxiety a lot, that's not who you are as a person. That's not what defines you. I doubt you've always been like this. So we create a bit of space between what we're feeling and who we are. And then that also gives us a sense of control. Because if it's who we are, we can't really fight it.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes we may need some help with that. That's where medications may be useful. But we create some separation instead of saying, I'm anxious that I'm going to fail this test. It's my anxiety doesn't think I can pass this test.
Ooh.
And then I'll be a failure and I'll be living in my parents' basement till I'm 50. Like, yeah, your anxiety really catastrophized there and just went all the way down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. The way you worded that's really empowering. Where it's like, well, I'm going to show my anxiety who's boss. I'm going to ace that test. That son of a bitch isn't going to keep me in the basement.
Yeah. And that's basically what it is. It's, well, that's just an opinion. That's just a voice, right? You interact with a lot of people in your day. A lot of them have opinions. Some of them you let go because you're like, I don't know this person. They don't know my situation. Your anxiety only has one perspective, the fear one.
Yeah. So you're getting some perspective that there's a lot of other ways to respond to this thing. And this isn't the only voice to be heard here.
You could listen to your esteem voice. Your esteem voice is saying, well, you studied and you paid attention in class and you did well on all of the assignments. And you did well on all the tests. So you're going to be able to take the final. And logically, you should be okay.
I like that.
We have two perspectives and you get to choose. So do you want to be on team anxiety today? Or do you want to be on team self-esteem today?
I like some client, it's kind of silly, but some clients get like really personal with it where I'm like, okay, we're going to name these states that you don't enjoy. So if you're to name for your anxiety, it's just something really deep, like some like teacher from elementary school that they hated, or like, like a childhood figure. It's very therapeutic. So like, okay, my anxiety's name is Steve or something like that. And I think sometimes it's easier, again, if we can separate, just like you said, it's easier to talk to Steve or to like see Steve clearly, our anxiety, than it is to be able to like sort through our own essence of anxiety. And I like that. The naming it situation.
Yeah. What about you? What's one that you give to your clients to help them?
One of my bread and butter ones is journaling, which again, if I have a client with maybe a learning disability or something like that, we won't do that. But the reason I like journaling is, I say our minds are like a cockroach infestation. And when it's in the dark and it's muggy and it's humid, they're just going nuts in there. But if we can open the door and like shine a flashlight, they're going to scatter. And so when we're anxious, we have to let our squirrel brain out. It's let the squirrel out. Otherwise, it's just going to keep rattling around in the cage. So journaling is basically a version of venting or processing, but doing it with yourself. So when you're writing, you can only write so fast, right? So that's going to help slow your mind down. And it's going to help bring a little bit of clarity, because now instead of just spiraling in this like thought loop that we're in, we're having to really kind of articulate and put words to our sensation. So I like having clients journal because I think it just lets the squirrel out of the cage. That's how I talk about that one.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And sometimes clients say, well, I don't know what to journal about. And sometimes it's a simple thing of like, what about this bothered me? If this fear came true, what does that mean? Really simple stuff. And again, I think some clients are more willing to do that at different times. It's obviously kind of a tiring skill. It takes some energy to do, but most of us can engage with our own thoughts in that way.
Yeah. I had a client who, before we really talked about coping skills, I want to say in her intake, she's like, I'm not really good at journaling. It's not really that useful to me.
Yeah.
But we did the emotions, and then the assignment I usually give them in conjunction after I do 6 core emotions is every day I want you to pick one emotion you felt that day and just write about your experience with that emotion. And then she came back the next one and she's like, God, journaling about my emotions was really helpful.
What do you know? Yeah. And I think when people say it's not helpful, I think it's the energy of writing. And then I think sometimes it can feel like we're just like indulging in our own mind. Like I think sometimes it can be hard to bring an outside perspective. So some people feel like it can amp them up, which again, being intentional about journaling, but I think if you're just kind of writing the same thing over and over again, and then you're saying journaling isn't helping, I think you need to stay in that journaling longer because you're stuck there. So like you're not really processing. So like, give it enough time. I say, 20 minutes is usually what I recommend. If you don't know what to write about, just write something for 20 minutes. Just keep going. That can be a good starting point. Give us number 2 for you. What's your next one?
Next one I do a lot with anxiety is fact checking. A lot of times our anxiety is rooted in worst case scenarios that aren't likely to happen. So with the fear about the stove, that would be fact checking, right? What are the facts? Did we use our stove? No. Then we didn't leave it on. The facts say the stove's not going to burn the house down because we left it on. This is also called taking your thoughts to court. So if we were presenting this thought in a court of law, what is the evidence that really supports this? What are the facts that support this? Right? Like my husband's going to get up and leave me. Is he though? Like, what are the facts for that? Has he done his laundry? Like, when was the last time he did his laundry? Like a week? If I was leaving somebody, I'd get my laundry done so I could quickly pack it. I'm not packing dirty laundry.
No, out of the way, you're gonna be good. Yeah. And well, as you're saying that, I was just thinking, like, I feel like I have to do this the most with people who are fearing abandonment. I think it's that, it's terrifying to have your heart broken, but again, it's like that. I think we can do a lot of projecting and make up these scenarios, but it's like, okay, he just texted you, I love you, like 2 minutes ago. He doesn't seem to be mad at you. I think he's probably not mad at you, and just like really kind of personalizing it.
Part of this is also noticing the behavior so that you can then use them as facts.
Yes, like reference that track record on your people.
Yep.
I like that. It's a cognitive one. One of my favorite cognitive tools. This is another one where clients are like, I feel like a lot of like, this just not going to work. Like that's not going to work. But it's so simple, but it's the idea of thought stopping, which is what it sounds like. You stop your thoughts. And so how I like to apply this one is like we talked about when we started. So the client identifies anxiety. We figure out what it is that's the threat. We figure out the productive actions. And now we have to deal with this leftover, this unproductive anxiety. And so I'll ask them, I'll say, is there anything left in this unproductive anxiety that we need to think through? Maybe we missed, maybe it's still helpful. Anything else? They'll say no. And then say, okay, we are not allowed to think about that anymore. We're done. Because we know if we pick it up, that is just straight up maladaptive anxiety. Our brain's going to tell us it's useful to think about it, but we already know it's not. So we have the data to combat that. So when those invasive, anxious thoughts start coming up, you are literally going to tell your brain, stop, we're done. We're done with that. Put it down. Sometimes some clients like to imagine like an actual stop sign, like a police officer holding his hand up. And the thing with thought stopping is you're going to have to apply the skill multiple times. If you are inclined towards obsession or like invasive thoughts, this is one that's going to have to keep coming up. So because you do it once doesn't mean it doesn't work. You're going to have to do it multiple times if you're stuck in like a frenzy of anxiety. Yeah. And that's just kind of like, I think it can be helpful to clients to remember that like, I've already processed this. So like this isn't, because the anxiety will tell you need to think about this or you will not be okay. I mean, we've already established like that's not the case. It's like we're just not going to go there. So I'll try to teach that one, which people think is funny, but
yeah, I used that one when I first started working in the field, and I would catch myself thinking about work at home.
Yeah,
and I would say, "Stop! You're not getting paid right now.
We're not doing this tonight." Yeah,
like this is your time. And then I would go do like a home-directed activity. I'll go wipe down the countertops, or I'd vacuum, or I'd fold the mountain of laundry in the chair in my bedroom and put it away.
And like redirect that. Yeah.
So I was doing mental stuff and then physically reinforcing that as well by doing something for my brain to see this is home time. This is not work time.
Yeah. And I love that like compartmentalization. We do a lot. I think a lot of anxiety can result in a lot of checking behavior and those behaviors can amplify the stress. For example, like personally, I was looking on Zillow because I was thinking about moving. However, I'm not moving for several months. Not really helpful to get myself worked up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing's going to go. This is the perfect situation. I'm not in a state of action yet. So guess what? I'm not allowed to go on Zillow. Not allowed to. Not helpful. It's not fun. Nothing good comes from that. So I've been doing a lot with my clients of like, okay, you're continuing to engage in, this checking behavior. It's not really helping. So like we're gonna delete this from your phone. You're not allowed to go do this at this time. And that can help a lot of people too, of just putting limits of until we are in an action stage, there is no point of thinking about this because it just make you anxious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is similar to another one I use. I don't think it has a real name. I call it the time test when I talk to my clients about it. But depending on what the issue is and how far into coping with the anxiety it is. So I usually start off with hour increments. So odd hours, you can worry and obsess about this thing. Even hours, you cannot. If you catch yourself worrying about this in an even hour, you need to use one of these previously discussed skills that you've learned.
Mm-hmm.
Thought stop, fact check it, distract, just go find something else to do, and wait till the odd hour rolls back around. And then as they progress with that, we increase the increments. So then the next week it's, okay, we're really going to push you. Noon to 3, you can worry. 3 to 6, you can't. 6 to 9, you can worry. 9 to midnight, you can't. Midnight to 3, you can.
Mm-hmm. It's being realistic that like you're going to have worry, you're going to have obsessive thoughts and invasive rumination. And if we can funnel that in like a safe way, a quote unquote safe way, in a way that's controlled, it's giving an outlet for that compulsive worry.
I often find with clients, two things happen. One is they spend so much time worrying about what time it is that they're not actually worrying about the actual thing.
It's like, is it time? Am I slotted? Is it worry time on my calendar?
But 2, we kind of remove the don't hit the red button phenomenon, where when we say don't worry about this or don't think about this or implement thought stopping, that works for some clients. For some clients, it just makes them want to do it more because we told them they can't. So this almost gives them permission to worry, and it's saying we just need to make sure it's not interfering too much with your day-to-day. You still need to get shit done.
Yeah, elephant in the room kind of thing.
Yeah.
I like that. I've done this with clients like by location, so assigning like a worry chair. If there's like an unused, comfortable chair in their house, you're allowed to sit in that chair and you can just worry. But then once you stand up, you have to be willing to be redirected in your thoughts. Or that can be, you can go on a worry walk. You can have these kind of like spaces where you're allowed to worry. And I think it can help people compartmentalize to let them know I can be in control of my emotions and I can choose when I deal with this and when's not a good time to process this right now too.
Yeah.
I like that. There's a skill called radical acceptance that's making me think like bleeding into that. Especially, if we are inclined towards being obsessive or anxious, there's going to probably be days where we're just going to feel that way. It's just going to be how it goes. And I think a lot of the times the distress with emotions can be feeling like we should not be feeling a certain way or really trying to white knuckle ourselves into feeling differently. And something can be really freeing about, I'm going to be stressed today. Things are kind of stressful. That's going to be what happens. And so then, I think leading into that the time test of like, okay, if I'm just going to be stressed, I need to at least control it or compartmentalize it. So let me figure out how to do that. It could be, a certain place or time or whatever. And so, with a client, this is something I'll often do at the end of session. They maybe told me what their week was like, all these things that they're stressed about. And we'll say, all right, probably going to feel this way for a week. It's going to be hard. You've been through worse. And this is just how this is going to go. Given that's going to be what happens, what do you still want to be intentional about? And so it's just saying you have permission to be anxious. You don't need to white knuckle it and change how you feel. This is just going to be a part of the state you're experiencing for a little while. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I like that one. I do that to myself a lot too. I'm like, dude, this is just the day that we're having today. And that's okay.
Yeah. I talk about it in terms of a plan with my clients. And so I'm like, all right, well, you're probably going to be stressed and that's going to be according to the plan. It's like, so you didn't do anything. So they'll come back and like, oh, I didn't have a very good week, or I struggled to use my skills, or I struggled to hit these goals. And I was like, it was admirable for you to want to set those goals, but we knew you were going to be really stressed out. You have all these work projects and you were stressed out, and that was within the plan. Like, you didn't do anything wrong.
So it's like helping them manage their own expectations. So then we're not also piling on other emotions of like failure
Yes.
or guilt or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you behaved in exactly in accordance of what we thought would happen. Way to be consistent.
Yeah. Way to listen to your emotions.
I like that.
Yeah.
Huh?
Another one I'll do is self-soothing. This is a regulatory one. We talked about some breathing techniques and some grounding skills in anger. Those are also really good with anxiety. Another kind of regulatory skill is self-soothing. People have like self-soothing behavior. So you think about babies with pacifiers, or they'll suck their thumbs, right? Those are self-soothing behaviors, something they do to calm themselves. As adults, we're not walking around with passies, hopefully.
Hopefully not, yeah. Be wary of that person.
One that we use a lot, or I use a lot, is using your senses. So sight, sound, smell, taste, feel. So there are a couple ways you can integrate this. You can just choose a number and then do 3 of each. So, or whatever number you choose, right? So if I chose 3, it'd be 3 things I can see, 3 things I can hear, 3 things I can smell, 3 things I can taste, and 3 things I can feel. You can also do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and do a countdown. I will usually do these 5 sights because we can usually have 5 objects that we can see. 4 feels, because there's probably also that many number of objects in our immediate vicinity that we can reach out and touch. 3 sounds, 2 smells, and then 1 taste. Taste is probably going to be the hardest.
Because like I just taste my mouth. Let's go get some
Or
gum.
if they have if you have gum, or if you have your water or another beverage, you can purposely take a sip of that. So those are some good ones.
I like that.
Yeah. So if this fiance, the socially anxious fiance, was your client, what skills or how would you maybe address this? We don't know how long he's been with his psychologist. It's been an 8-month break between visiting the uncle. Still hasn't made it to visit the aunt. So not a lot of progress has been made. So now it's time to like really push him.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm really gentle when I push clients on anxiety. I definitely start off with explaining that kind of vaccine approach, which we talked about in the first part of anxiety, of like the only way to get over this is to be anxious. And so it's just kind of saying, this is the mountain that we're going to climb and we're going to have to go over this. And so I kind of assess their willingness to feel uncomfortable. And so I'll talk about what would be the benefits of being uncomfortable. What are the risks of being comfortable? And I'd probably go into what have been the barriers to the fiance being willing to see the family. So we'd get into the actual fear. What are we actually afraid of? We'll deconstruct that. And then I like a good gradual exposure hierarchy. So I would say that, we'd start numbers 1 through 10, 10 being the most challenging or the most anxiety inducing experience. Let's say that's actually, meeting the aunt or whatever. So maybe level 1 would be like setting plans for a FaceTime. Level 2 would be like attending a FaceTime call. Level 3, setting, whatever. And so it's like kind of this step ladder, because what the fiance will learn over time is that I'm actually capable of experiencing anxiety. And the higher we go on the ladder, the more skills are practiced, because I've been able to accomplish these lower levels, meaning I can handle some distress. And then if the fiance did not want to do it, I would basically say, well, nothing is going to change if nothing changes. So what do you want to do? Was what I would probably say. This is motivational interviewing and change talk and all those other things. But if we're just focusing on some of the skills we talked about of anxiety, that's the approach I would take.
Yeah, I like that.
What'd you do?
You lean towards skills that you typically do.
Yeah.
I lean towards skills I typically do. So I would also deconstruct and figure out what the actual fear is. We probably throw in some fact checking. Is she going to judge you? Probably. She's assessing you. She's seeing if you're good enough for her niece. That's legit.
Yeah. But she should do that. So she loves her, right?
Right. Probably throwing in maybe some grounding skills for the actual like FaceTiming or meetings. I'd also do exposure therapy. Putting himself in her shoes, I think, might be helpful as well. If your fiance was unwilling to meet your family in this 1 year time frame, 1 year and 8 month time frame, how would you feel? What do you think that would say about their commitment to the relationship? If you can't overcome the anxiety in a timely manner, how can you reassure your fiance that you still love them and value the relationship? We kind of have to juggle a couple of things here because we want to keep if the relationship is important enough to him to keep it intact,
Yeah.
we got to make sure we do some relationship repair work there while he's working on managing the anxiety. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think this feels like perhaps a siloed issue, but I think also when somebody's about to get married or maybe they're about to enter parenthood or something like that, like you're going to have a lot of stressful things happen. So like this is not just to resolve this issue, but like you are building muscles that you're going to have to use a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to go to meet your kid's teacher because she's a stranger. You're not going to attend your own wedding because there's too many people. Like this is going to keep coming up for you. So like this learning how to deal with this now is going to have value past this moment. And so I kind of, try to put some perspective too of like, this is not going to go away if you don't deal with this. It's going to get worse.
I'd also probably bring in some values work. We talked about values in Joy Part 2, I think. He used to be a social butterfly. Something about socializing energized him, and he liked that. We can remind him of what that was and how that aligned with his value set. We might be able to bring him back to and the enjoyment, or remind him, think about all these times you socialized and nothing terrible happened.
Yeah.
We are putting these experiences on a scale. How many times did you go out in public and something terrible happened? 0. How many times did you go out and you had a really great time? More than I can count.
That fact checking word. Yeah, a lot of evidence to support that there's no real harm here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And sort of, and with the anger, we talked about coping skills to help ourselves regulate, and then how to maybe deal with somebody else who's being angry and like help de-escalate. With the anxiety, so in this post, our author is the partner to a person who's high anxiety. What would you talk to her about in terms of the difference kind of between, being sensitive to a partner's struggle, but then also not like enabling that?
Yeah. I talk a lot with my clients, for them and for the people they interact with, between managing anxiety and accommodating anxiety. So if your spouse can only use this one particular cup, and so you go out of your way, and even when you're really tired and want to leave dishes in the sink before you go to bed, you go out of your way to make sure that cup is clean for them in the morning. You're not helping them manage their anxiety, you're accommodating it.
You're like removing barriers. They can get to it way easier now.
Yeah. Something, obviously, if you have OCD, for you, that's not something small, but in the grand scheme of things, nothing bad will happen to them if you don't wash their cup. And they're perfectly capable of washing their own cup. So you don't need to push yourself if you had a really long day and you just want to go to sleep without doing dishes.
Yeah. The negative consequence will be they feel anxiety.
Yeah, which they can tolerate. So when it's parsing out, are you enabling them in any way? Then it's, how can you support them? And that usually requires them to have a bit of insight as to what is helpful for them.
Yeah.
So if they're going to therapy, you share skills. So if I have the anxious client, I say, you need to share the skills that are helpful with your partner. They may not know what that skill is, but if they can say, can you fact check this? Can you do the 3 Bs? Can you ground? They may not actually know what grounding is, but if they say, can you ground? And you're like, I can, and you start grounding, that's helpful to you.
I like that.
So asking your partner, hey, are there skills or things I can do for you when you're anxious? Would it be helpful if I held your hand? Would it be helpful to tell you you're okay, you're safe, nothing's going to happen? Would it be helpful to say, I got you? I remember I had one client, if you just told her it was going to be okay, she'd be mid-panic attack, and she'd instantly start self-regulating if you just said, it'll be okay, you can handle this.
Which really, because when we talked about, anxiety is feeling that my responsibilities are past my ability to manage. If somebody says, hey, you actually can manage this, it's like, oh, never mind, don't need to panic. Let me just stop.
False alarm.
Yeah, false alarm. Yeah, that was her mechanism of like learning that she is capable. So then she's able to put down the anxiety because she
She just needed somebody to remind her.
Wow. And so simple. If she had her natural support system knew that, they could really be helpful in supporting her.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I do a lot of, it's a general statement of like, don't do for others what they can do for themselves. So it's not about rescuing them from the anxiety. It's about helping them tolerate experiencing it. So like Erica said, that's, helping them learn their tools. But if we are rescuing them and helping them be further avoidant, we are causing them harm. We are making that anxiety worse. They will continue to be avoidant. Yeah. So us protecting them is really unhelpful. And it's difficult to watch our loved ones suffer in that way. And it can make us feel helpless, especially if they're lashing out. But our job is to give them the dignity to have their emotions and to not say, I need you to change how you feel because I'm too uncomfortable to tolerate your stress. Mm-hmm. So again, if you're finding that you're engaging in a lot of rescuing behaviors, you probably also need to go to therapy to talk about the people pleasing, the emotional rescuing, how to regulate yourself and your partner's deregulated, all that good stuff too.
Yeah. You rescuing them only reinforces the narrative they're telling themselves of this is beyond my control or beyond my ability to cope. If you are going in and rescuing them, you are reinforcing that narrative versus if you stand back and say, I'm here, I got you, but you can do this.
Yeah.
That's challenging that cognitive distortion that they're telling themselves.
Absolutely. So not only are you depriving them of the experience to expand distress tolerance by having stress, you're also then further lowering their self-efficacy that they can in fact do that. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a double whammy on the injuries from enabling their boy. Yeah, that's a really good point. Especially when we're rescuing, children, because they're forming their sense of self, and that's going to stick to the bones when they feel like they can't handle anything.
Mm-hmm. Another skill that I use a lot with my clients is mindfulness.
Yep.
A big part of CBT and a lot of the skills we introduce you guys to is you actually have to be aware that you're thinking that thing. And if you're not aware of your thoughts and they just kind of happen, we call it like automatic thought processing. They're just happening on autopilot and you're not really aware of them. It's going to be hard for you to then go in and do thought stopping. It's then going to be harder for you to go in and fact check that or to only think that thought on even hours or odd hours. And so mindfulness is a skill. It's a meditation skill. So any guided meditations you guys may engage in are going to be a mindfulness skill. You're basically training your brain to notice what it's thinking. So the more you practice this, the more efficient you're going to be at noticing what you're thinking, the more efficient you're going to be at then applying these skills. So I'm actually going to do a mindfulness script for you. We're going to do Leaves on a Stream because it's short and sweet, maybe about 5 to 7 minutes. We're going to do it at the end though. So if you guys are doing something now, you'll want to have some time and some space and the ability to stop, close your eyes, and just focus on you. So you may come back to this episode to hear this if you guys are driving. This is not something you do while you're driving.
Yeah. Yeah. While operating heavy machinery of any kind.
Yeah.
I did a guided meditation one time and the voice was very soothing. And he was like, do not do this if you're operating heavy machinery. And he was giving like the medical disclaimers in that really soothing voice. I was like, this is a weird way to start this meditation.
No, I'm going to do it in a really harsh mean voice because we don't want that liability and we are not accepting it. We're telling you now, don't do that shit.
Yeah. Be in a calm, quiet place. So we'll do the summary and then Erica will walk us through that. Okay, pop quiz summary time. We did part 2 of anxiety today. So we did a little kind of summary from episode 1 of anxiety, and then we were really focused on introducing some coping skills here. Me and Erica both kind of agreed that step 1 is assessing the threat. So figuring it out what it is that's making us feel unsafe. So we can get into maybe some core belief work down there of what about this bothers me. Sometimes we'll find some functional anxiety from there where we're actually taking action and making lists. So once we sort through that and we find that we are in fact an unhelpful anxiety, there's nothing left to pick apart there. we can apply some skills. Just a high level, kind of reflecting them back to you guys. We did the diffusion techniques where we depersonalized our emotions and said, I am not my emotional state. This is just something going on. We did journaling, which helps because it lets the squirrel out of the cage so that you can dissipate some of that mental spiral. Thought stopping. This could be good once we know we've done everything that we can do that's productive. Anything past this is unhelpful. We are just making a compartment in our brain that we're not allowed to revisit that worry. Fact checking looks like assessing for evidence to both support and challenge our fear response or perhaps irrational belief. This can look like taking it to court, where you imagine that yourself is a prosecutor and defense attorney, and you're both presenting evidence on either side. One that can be kind of fun is called the time test or a worry chair, which is basically saying you are allowed to obsess and worry as much as you want, but only at certain times. So on odd hours, you're not allowed to, even hours you can. Maybe you can only worry at certain places. Self-soothing is a way of bottom-up grounding, where we are going to use our body to back into our mind to help us calm down. So this is engaging the 5 senses. So you could either just kind of pick a number, or you can do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 of things in your immediate area that you can see, hear, smell, taste, and feel. Radical acceptance was for clients with kind of high state anxiety, where they might just enter a place of persistent stress arousal. It's kind of just admitting to ourselves that that's going to be our experience. We don't need to change it. We can live with that, and that's just going to be part of the next week, and we can still function with that. Did I miss any?
No, I don't think so.
Sorry, that summary came like to a really abrupt end. And then we'll get into mindfulness, which Erica will talk us through here in a moment. And that can help with a function called metacognition, which is thinking about your own thoughts. So mindfulness can help you bring awareness to some potential thought errors. And also it's physically relaxing, right? There's breath work and all different kinds of things there too. So take us away. Leaves on a Stream.
Leaves on a Stream. Okay. I invite you to sit in a comfortable position with your arms resting in your lap. Allow your eyes to gently close or fix them on a point in front of you. Take a couple of gentle breaths in, breathing in through your nose, and slowly exhaling out through your mouth. Notice the sound and feel of your own breath as you breathe in and out. Now I'd like you to imagine that you are standing by the bank of a gently flowing stream, watching the water flow. Imagine feeling the ground beneath you, the sounds of the water flowing past, and the way the stream looks as you watch it. Imagine that there are leaves from trees of all different shapes, sizes, and colors floating past on the stream, and you are just watching these float. This is all you need to do for the time being. Start to become aware of your thoughts, feelings, and any body sensations. Each time you notice a thought, feeling, or a sensation, imagine placing it on a leaf and letting it float down the stream. Do this regardless of whether the thoughts, feelings, or sensations are comfortable or uncomfortable, pleasurable or painful. Even if they are the most wonderful thoughts, place them on the leaf and let them float by. If your thoughts stop, just watch the stream. Sooner or later, your thoughts should start up again. Allow the stream to flow at its own rate. Notice any urges to speed up or slow down the stream, and let these urges be on leaves as well. Let the stream flow how it will. If you have thoughts, feelings, or sensations about doing this exercise, place these on leaves as well. If a leaf gets stuck or won't go away, let it hang around for a little while. All you are doing is observing this experience. There is no need to force the leaf down the stream. If you find yourself getting caught up with a thought or feeling, such as boredom or impatience, simply acknowledge it. Say to yourself, here's a feeling of boredom, or here's a feeling of impatience. Then place those words on a leaf and let them float on by. You are just observing each experience and placing it on a leaf on the stream. It is normal and natural to lose track of this experience, and it will keep happening. When you notice yourself losing track, just bring yourself back to watching the leaves on the stream. Notice the stream and place any thoughts, feelings, or sensations on the leaves and let them gently float down the stream. Finally, allow the image of the stream to dissolve and slowly bring your attention back to sitting in this room. Gently open your eyes. Notice what you can see. Notice what you can hear. Push your feet into the floor and have a stretch. Notice yourself stretching. Welcome back. All right, that is mindfulness, a guided meditation. You
Love
were
that.
following along.
I always do. It was soothing.
Share with our audience your experience with that.
My experience, I've found that all the leaves were evenly spaced in like this very odd pattern, which I was thinking of like almost like ducks, like those little like an arcade game. So once I noticed that, I was trying to help myself just kind of be a little bit more relaxed. I definitely noticed myself getting distracted. And then I would kind of notice my body sensations. So then my breath would bring me back into focus.
Yeah. Getting distracted is normal.
Oh yeah.
Even people who practice this daily for years and years will occasionally get distracted, but the more you practice, the more you're able to stay focused.
Yeah, and I have clients who get frustrated with guided meditation. The point is to not have no thoughts. The point is just to be with yourself. So don't get too goal oriented on the guided meditations. The point is just to let yourself experience them, and you're going to react to it different every time you do it. It's kind of like yoga, I think. But
yeah.
All right.
Other thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, I don't know. You guys can handle it. It's going to be okay, and you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good summary there. I don't know. You can do it, guys.
All right. As always, we would love to hear your thoughts. Any questions you may have, you can hit us up on Instagram at Assertive Podcast or email them to us, assertivepodcast@gmail.com. Until next time.